Yoy there, it's Gigi from Shift Happens. Just stopping by to tell you to stop it. Stop that. Stop that thing that you're doing. And redirect all of your attention right directly back here to the Fringe FM. You're welcome.
which has been made hidden. As a part of a family of explorers of consciousness, I'm the Void One.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live, and we're on the Fringe FM. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. KTLK Digital Broadcasting, Fringe.fm, live on YouTube, and I believe Facebook. I still, for some reason, cannot figure out how to get the video back on my timeline, but on the Lighting the Void timeline on Facebook, so you'll have to friend me personally on there, or just follow it on Facebook if you want to watch on Facebook. I'm not really a big fan of Facebook. I just use it to say what's up to people sometimes and like promote stuff. It's a good way to communicate with people. But anyways, happy Valentine's Day. I hope that you're not having to watch this broadcast. I hope that you're with somebody tonight, but sorry about the late start, but it's Valentine's Day. I had prior obligations too, I tend to keep that stuff a little bit more private, but it is what it is. So tonight, I thought that we would go over this great mystery called love, right? And this isn't going to be the doom and gloom broadcast tonight, okay? So we're going to get into the deep esoteric versions of it. What's up, Marla? What's up, Jess and Nicole, Emily? Did everybody get their chocolates? Did everybody get something? Did all you guys get your Valentine's Day gift? I have more of an Aquarian nature, so I try to do different stuff on Valentine's Day. Some people say I'm a little weird, but I have Aquarius and Venus in both charts, right? So I'm a little bit more. It's weird. I like traditional stuff, right? Like as far as love is concerned, but the way I do things is super untraditional. What's up, Dale? So tonight, naturally, what I like to do is I like to get into the deeper esoteric meanings of something, right? And we're going to get into 3 cards tonight that I think correspond with this, okay? The Lover's card, okay? The Two of Cups, and the Devil card. Now, all of these have good and bad qualities. And we're going to get into a little text that I esoterically grew up studying this text, and then I'll give you my thoughts on what this is. But mainly we're going to talk about more of the Qabalistic energies and the real esoteric energies behind this stuff. So remember that there's 32 paths of wisdom on the tree, right? And the 22 paths are the paths, and the other 10 correspond with the 10 Sephirah, right? So the 1 through 10 cards correspond with those 10 Sephirah, and the Arcana correspond with the paths. Now, this is before you get into, this is the 32 paths of wisdom or intelligence or whatever you want to call it. This is before you get into the astrological and planetary energies and stuff like that. Now, it's my opinion that the greatest mystery of life is love. And I think that Valentine's Day represents that. Now, there's a whole we could get into the pagan mystery of all this stuff if you want to, but I think that the deeper meanings of these cards will help. And I do tarot readings too on the Patreon. I made the shop on the Patreon if any of you guys are interested in that, but it's more from a Qabalistic version, right? So there's this book I highly recommend everybody get if you're interested in tarot, and it's called The Qabalistic Tarot by Robert Wang. Can y'all see that? It's deep, man. And I have studied this book so much. But before I ever got books when it came to tarot, before I ever even got them, I was reading Liam Thomas Christopher's book, which was a long time ago. And in his course, he would have you pull out a tarot card, say like the Lovers. Right? You'd pull out one every day and you'd meditate on it. He wasn't really, I don't think he did it. I don't know why he wanted you to do this, but I started understanding that it was to help you tap into your intuition, because these things are full of symbols. It's kind of like the old Renaissance art, right? It wasn't really meant to just look at it and go, oh yeah, that's pretty. It was meant to meditate upon. Okay? And you start to notice patterns and symbols and things like that. And the more you meditate upon it, the more it unlocks things in your subconscious. And then you would advance in magical operations and you would learn to scry into the tarot cards. In other words, you would lose yourself into the card. You would actually get yourself in a trance state and go there. And they taught you how to do this through Tatua cards, which is a whole other program. But this book by Robert Wang is one of my favorite books in the world. Now, before we get into that, hold on. Before we get into that, let me just show you guys something here. I almost dropped my book. This card, when I meditated upon it, the first thing I saw was a triangle. The triangle between the male and the female and the angel. I don't know why. There's so much. There's nothing in this card that represents the triangle. Let me just pull it up here. I did this. Like, let me see if this works. There we go. Is that big enough? Y'all probably can't see that. Let me see if I can make it bigger. And if you guys are listening on the radio, I would highly recommend to come to YouTube at this point. Why not? All right. It's not going to let me make it bigger right now. So the triangle between the masculine and feminine. And the first things that I noticed was the Red Mountain. Now Arthur Edward Waite, if you remember correctly, was an original member of the Golden Dawn. This is his tarot. They were designed, or they were not designed, but they were instructed to make their own tarot decks with all of the symbolism in mind. So this deck has all of the Golden Dawn energies and teachings in them. Now, he did hide a lot of stuff, which Crowley revealed a little bit more in his deck, but he did hide a lot of stuff. And if you remember, Arthur Edward Waite had more of a Christian kind of view about things, but he still hid a lot of stuff in here. So here's the thing. What you think you see about the Lovers is you think you're seeing something about a couple, right? Or about love, but it's more about the self more than anything. If you know, the first thing I noticed was like I said, the Red Mountain. I began to notice the colors, like all of the colors in the cards, they have the elemental correspondences to them, depending on what decks you buy. If you buy more modern decks, they start mixing up the colors and it makes it a bit confusing. But if you look in here and that, like, you get a traditional deck, which I'm not saying you have to, the colors obviously correspond with the element. Yellow would be air, red would be fire, blue would be water, and green would be earth. And you would see it on their clothing. You would see all these different symbols in every card. Now, every now and then you'd get a card that would show black, right? And black always ended with the swords. It's like, we'll get into that though, why that turns into blackness. But this card, the Lovers, has all of the elements in them, every single one. So it has the masculine, naked and open, with a tree behind him, burning. Now the bush is burning on every branch. Once you really start learning to meditate on these, you'll even count. You start counting everything. Well, why is there? Let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And little bushes on fire. Why? That means something. Everything means something in the card. You start learning this stuff after you meditate on it. So he's naked. He's vulnerable. Where are his eyes? That's another thing I noticed. That his eyes were looking directly at the feminine. Same thing for the feminine. Naked, open, vulnerable. Doesn't really care though. Where are her eyes? Her eyes are looking at the angel. Now this is stuff that started intuitively coming to me before I really got into like studying stuff. It's bad luck to buy yourself a deck. I don't believe in luck, sir. I believe you make your own luck. I don't believe in the traditional sense of luck, like not in the video game where you have a little luck meter, that goes up and down. I think it's all a mindset. And most people I know, including some of the best magicians in the world, have bought their own decks and created their own decks. It's actually cool if you can create your own, though. But anyways, I hear you. It's nice to get a gift, though. It's a good Valentine's Day gift if any of you guys ever want to do that. So the feminine is looking at the angel, and then the male is looking at the feminine. And that's where I noticed this triangle, right? This first triangle, this unity between masculine and feminine. And behind him, the fire burns like desire. Masculine energy has a lot of fire energy. It's impulsive. It goes. But the tree is grown right out of the earthly ground, the green ground. It's different in the devil card. You'll see where the fire and all this stuff is. With the feminine, it shows the Kundalini force, right? This was my first intuitive stuff, going up the tree. So you could say, if you want to look at it in an Eastern sense, all of her chakras are open. You could also look at it in a sense of knowledge, and the tree is bearing fruit, which are actually 4 pieces of fruit, which 4 represents what? A foundation. Now, when you look at a lot of tarot readings, people pull these cards and they think, well, this is the Lover's card. There's obviously some love here. Or maybe this person's a Sagittarius, or maybe there's a Scorpio. I don't know, whatever. And it's usually just energies that people are picking up. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a person. Now, I started looking at the opposite, which I call it the opposite, which was the Devil card. Now, what do we see here? This has that blackness behind it, right? So we know that's going to correspond with the mind. And you see the bat wings. Well, what do the bat wings represent? A bat is what? A bat is a creature of air. So the mind is dominating these two energies, this masculine energy and feminine energy. It's keeping it trapped. And you see that black altar there. That's really supposed to be, but wait, hit it, is like the black double cubed altar. It's not hidden in other tarot decks if you'll see it, which is kind of like, most people think, well, it's obsession, and it is in a sense, but what I really first started noticing was the triangle was going the other way. It's kind of downward, right? Where the triangle on the Lover's card is a little bit hidden. It goes upwards. And so this one shows people trapped, chained to the double cubed black altar, which we can get into that as well. But what I first intuitively noticed, and this was back in 2015, is like, well, why are the chains so loose? Right? Like Genevieve says, I bought my own. Happy Valentine's Day, Genevieve. They could just take those chains right off the head. They could. But look with the eyes of the masculine. Look where they're looking. He's looking down, and you can see what he's looking at. And the fire is burning him up. He has a tail. It doesn't have a tree behind it that's growing anything, or a red mountain. It has his tail is on fire. He's burning himself up. The same thing. The feminine, you can't really tell what she's looking at. She kind of looks like she's looking off into space, but she has the fruit on her body. It's just more of a material focus. It's like I guess you could say, more of a focus or obsession or being trapped by the material world. Now, this doesn't mean men do this and women do this. I'm specifically talking masculine energy and feminine energy, all trapped by the prince of the air who is controlling their mind. So through their desires, their minds they're trapped themselves when they can easily just take the chains off and move. And then there's another card that I hope we'll get into if we have time tonight. And this was all I'm saying is this was some of the first things I noticed before I cracked open any book. It was like the first meditations that I noticed on this, the first stuff. And this is when I'm like, oh man, I'm really falling in love with the tarot. Like when I first started getting into tarot, people would just pull out cards and start telling me stuff. And I was like, nah, there's got to be some deeper stuff to this. So the Two of Cups is the next one that I want to kind of go over. Now that obviously doesn't show so much masculine and feminine, but it does still show that triangle and this union of kind of opposites. Remember what I said about color, right? So you see the earth and the house behind them. But you see, one figure is covered in kind of pomegranates in an air color with a cup, and another figure has a wreath around their head that's green, just like this one has a red one covered in blue, which is water. Hopefully, that's all I saw. When I first saw this card, I was like, well, this is just two people that love each other, and this little symbol means that it's balanced or something, right? That's all it means. I wasn't really going through the colors. I wasn't really like counting all the stuff. I wasn't really focused on it, but I was fascinated with the Devil card and the Lovers card. Right? That was the first things that I became fascinated with, the details of them too. So when I started learning, I learned from this book. And we used this book in the tarot course that I put up too, which we don't like. There's stuff that I'm going to talk about that's not really relevant, but the Lover's card really corresponds to the path of Zane, which is the 6th key on the tree. It even has a related sound, a color, of course, the sign Gemini, but there's a lot of different meanings to it. But the esoteric title of it is The Child or the Children of the Voice and the Oracle of the Mighty Gods. And on the 32 paths of wisdom, this is the 17th path, which is called Disposing Intelligence, which provides faith to the righteous, and they are clothed with the Holy Spirit by it. And it is called the foundation of excellence in the state of higher things. And in this book, it'll show a glyph of the tree, which we also do in the tarot course. It shows the path and the color and all the symbols that correspond with it. I might have a short show tonight. I don't know. Valentine's Day and Halloween and the 4th of July are like my 3 favorite holidays. So always trying to do something. So let's get into this, right? The path of Zane, or the Lovers, between Bina and Tifereth. Okay, if you guys don't know what that is, I wish I could have had time to pull up a glyph, but it's just a path between Tifereth on the tree, in the middle of the tree, that goes up to Bina, that sphere. It connects to pure consciousness, from which form emerged, with central point of all. It's the central point of all manifestation, a complexity which can barely be suggested by the image on the tarot card. It is perhaps for this reason the design of the card has changed over the centuries, and most of the earlier versions, such as the Marseille Tarot, it was just called the Lover, singular, and showed a man between two women, above whom was a Cupid with a poised arrow. Presumably, the single lover made no sense to later tarot artists, and in the 18th century the card began to appear with two lovers and a uniting figure of some sort. So there was other cards before the Rider-Waite, right? So yet the early concept of the Lover is very profound, for this card does not represent the mundane love of two persons. Well, I highly think Robert Wang. You guys know I'm going to give my opinions. No matter this is one of the most intelligent men I've ever read in magic. He also has a tarot deck called the Jungian Tarot, which I highly recommend. But I do not think the love between two people is mundane. But maybe to him it is. It is rather the dualities of the single individual, willfully united in pursuit of divine love. Now, if you guys, I didn't have time to get Crowley's card out. Maybe I will later, but Crowley points out that the card should really be called the Brothers. But in fact, the key true meaning is embedded in the sign of the zodiac Gemini, the twins. And no, I'm not talking about the twin flames or the twin flame journey and all this other stuff. I got to have some people on to talk about that, right? Word Salad says, I like to do a tree of life layout tarot reading. Yeah, that's perfect, man. The dual energies with which the lover's purpose is to unite are equal and opposite. The twins, the uniting of these twins is a major step upwards towards the Godhead on the tree of life. The principle is that as divine energy surges across the abyss into manifestation, stable dualities were formed. The great work is a marriage, and you'll read about this, the marriage of the bridegroom and all this other stuff, right? But the great work is a marriage of these dualities of manifestation, a return to a primeval state. Thus, this path may be considered the aspect of the Garden of Eden from which mankind was expelled, but to which it may re-entry or earn re-entry by consciously dealing with what has been called the inner sun and moon. Remember when I talked about the sun, the moon, and the stars are the three stages of the mystery. And they're also tarot cards too, all three of them. The whole key to the great work is uniting of the sun and the moon under Mercury, the planet ruling Gemini. So in relating the symbol to the path of the lovers, Paul Foster Case, which was also a regular member of the Golden Dawn, he performed a fascinating exercise in gematria. He took the Hebrew title of the path from the 32 paths of wisdom and broke it down into its component parts. The path of Zayn is called the disposing intelligence, which is spelled out Ha-Regesh, but I don't have a glyph for that to show you guys. So from which the following derived. So Resh is the sun, Gimel is the moon, Shin is fire. So the sun plus moon plus fire on the tarot card. And the sun is the man, the moon is the woman, and the divine fire above the abyss is represented by the angel or Cupid. So if you remember, like when you look at these cards or you meditate upon them, once you start learning about the tree, remember to put that glyph behind each card. And then you'll start seeing why they drew these energies in certain spots. I think the Justice card really shows that too. So an explanation of this, Case states that the sun is self-consciousness, while the moon is the subconscious. These are both aspects of the one life breath, each working through half the body. And when the solar and lunar currents of the life power are rightly perceived, rightly discriminated, and when their operation is kept in proper order, the personality of the man engaged in his practice becomes a free, unobstructed channel for the outpouring of the cosmic life force. And the man, woman, doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. I think he's talking about the human. So Paul Foster Case was discussing not the Rider-Waite deck, but his own Builders of the Adytum version, which is a deck you can buy and you can color yourself, I used to do that too. It's really cool. You buy this blank black and white deck and they'll have you color each card and you kind of start going through each, steps of the mysteries, and then you put your own colors in, and it has like this thing that activates your unconscious while you're doing that. Which was a correction of the earlier deck, which changed the symbolism a little, but improved the drawing quality and eliminated the personified minor cards. Thus, one would expect explanations of the cards by Waite and Case to be similar, even despite Arthur Edward Waite's apparent caution about what he put into print. Such similarities, however, are few, and where Paul Foster Case considered this card one of how do I say this? Our dualities unified by the spiritual self. Please, God, don't make me put the glasses on. Don't make me put those things on. So Waite merely emphasized its relationship to the Garden of Eden. He referred to Adam and Eve and to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but made no mention of spiritual alchemy in this card, which he called love before it is contaminated by gross material desire, adding that, in a very high sense, the card is a mystery of the covenant and the Sabbath. I told you guys Waite was a Christian kind of guy, right? Who would have thought a Christian made that tarot deck, right? One might well suggest that such comments drawn from his pictorial key to the tarot are so cryptic as to be almost useless to the serious student. The intention here is not to deprecate Waite, but who must be respected for maintaining his oaths of secrecy, but to point out the extent to which there are two explanations to every card, an exoteric explanation and an esoteric one. In all versions of this key, no matter how it may be described or how different the design, the esoteric meaning is the same. They all mean the union of manifest opposites under the divine love of the supernals through Bina. It is, as Waite stresses, the Garden of Eden, but it is the garden from which the soul itself is expelled in manifestation and to which it may return. The same message is in Crowley's card, which shows the theme of a union as an alchemical marriage of the component parts of the seeker. The Golden Dawn also represents the spiritual union, but with an important difference. The seeker works actively for this to come about. The higher self descends to release the personality from bondage, recalling the idea encountered with the hanged man, that while the personality believes itself to be the pursuer, it is actually the pursued. The legend of Perseus and Andromeda, used to make this point, contains some fascinating implications for the interpretation of the card. So there's a Golden Dawn deck that shows Perseus and Andromeda. It's kind of, people are like, what is this? Is some chick on a rock with this beast in the ocean? It doesn't even look like the Lover's card, but it's in that deck. So in the myth, Andromeda was the daughter of the king of the Ethiopians in Cassiopeia, who boasted that she was more beautiful than the Nereids, which was daughters of the sea gods. So in anger, the Nereids complained to Poseidon, who flooded the land and then sent a terrible monster to inhabit it. The only way that this monster could be vanquished was for the king's daughter, Andromeda, to be sacrificed to it, and she was thus tied to a rock on the shore. Perseus, however, who had just successfully taken the head of Medusa and saw Andromeda and fell in love. He wanted to marry her, which the father insisted was only possible if the monster were slain. So Perseus killed the monster, but Andromeda's uncle nevertheless tried to prevent the marriage by sending attackers against the hero. What did her uncle have to do with it? That's weird, right? So Perseus in turn displayed the frightful head of Medusa and turned his adversaries to stone, after which he had Andromeda lived more or less happily ever after, which there's a whole bunch of metaphors in that story, right? So, however, in one ancient interpretation of the story, Perseus and Andromeda and her father, mother, and the monster were brought into the sky, where they became constellations of the same names. But in Qabalistic terms, this could be taken to mean that the actions of Perseus, the spiritual self, resulted in the return of all participants to the sky, i.e. the Godhead. And while that explanation may seem a bit strained, such mythologies were part of the general culture at the time of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and were often interpreted in esoteric terms. So my point is this card was when Arthur Edward Waite was in the Golden Dawn, made this card, but still hid some stuff. So every time we pick up this card and we look at it, the Lovers, we take a piece of that egregore with us, that energy. All kinds of people across the United States pick up. It's probably one of the most sold decks you can get, right? You're tapping into the egregore of that original magical order in 1888. So in a sense, you're all magicians, whether you like it or not, especially if you're messing with tarot, right? So the stress of the Golden Dawn card is on the extent to which the process of this path is a very active one for the self-control and will, or Mercury, which directs the movement and intelligence of the opposites, is not passive, as the other cards seem to suggest. Perseus has the same fiery dynamic and inspirational qualities ascribed to the serpent. Another indicator of activity on this path, the Lovers, is the attribution of the sword to Zain, or Zain, however you want to pronounce it in Hebrew. And this is an instrument of active division and separation. It is a sword of perception which cuts to the core of things and defines clearly, which is like Gemini energy, right? And insofar as such perception is attributed to Zain, to it is also attached the sense of smell, thus implying not only the most direct, but also the most subtle of awareness and responses. Would you ever look at this card, though? I remember when I first read this, I was like, would you ever look at this card and be like, yeah, it's the sense of smell? While the sword is rarely found in this tarot key, it is very common in alchemical representations of the same theme, as for example in the 11th key of Basilius Valentinus, the 17th century alchemist. In his illustration are two female twins, each mounted on a lion and holding a figure of the sun and the moon. And behind them is a man in armor, another meaning of Zain. and building a sword. The caption reads, "The twin sun and moon are united by the conjunction which seems to be death." So we understand that the consummation of this marriage requires a death. Indeed, to successfully pursue this path across the abyss means the death of one's own higher self. They always want to cross the abyss. But I also believe, I don't know how many times I've read this passage, but in this book, but also believe to understand, and this is me talking, not Robert Wang, that to really understand the highest mysteries of love, you do have to die in a sense. And we've been doing this whole series on what happens after we die. Pretty strange. Sorry, I was having some kind of weird epiphany thing there. It is a willful and total self-destruction and immersion into the divine. The separation and reintegration of the dual components of the manifest self demands subordination of the ego to the one divine principle. The sword destroys utterly those who will travel across the abyss. Thus is the path called the disposing intelligence. It is an experience which is the completion of the process begun on the path of samek, or temperance, and taken together, temperance and the lovers are the alchemical formula of solvet coagula. Did you know that? The sword separates out or dissolves an activity which we have previously shown to mean analysis. This is followed by a synthesis or reintegration in a new way, therefore solvet coagula. It can actually be quite intriguing to see how all of the complicated symbols of alchemy, lions, eagles, gluttons, suns, moons, etc., reduced to some very basic psychological concepts. But here again, we appreciate that such descriptive terms did not exist until the present day, and we are forced to interpret the codes of the early Kabbalist of Mathers, of Waite, and even of Crowley. And in the lovers, this requisite decipherment of language is especially difficult. Crowley, in fact, stated that the lovers and temperance were the most difficult cards of the tarot, which is certainly true. The path of temperance requires a complete integration of the personality and its subordination to the ego and Tifereth. The path of the lovers requires a complete integration of the totality of the self manifest in the micro-prosopis, for the return of the soul to the aspect of the garden from which it emerged. In more basic terms, temperance is the balance of the lower self. The lovers is the balance of the higher self. I love this book, man. This thing's got I've got a bunch of tarot books, right? But this one is the one that the pages are getting dim. By comparison with Waite and Golden Dawn cards, Crowley's Lovers is intellectually superior. Certainly no version of the Lovers has ever been more daringly explicit in revealing the secret path. What is shown here is the royal marriage of opposites, presiding over by the hooded figure who is at once the hermit and the personification of Mercury. I don't have a Lovers, like a Crowley Lovers glyph. I should have. I didn't have a lot of time today, or I would have pulled that one up. It's a beautiful card. And so it's the hooded figure who is set once the hermit and the personification of Mercury. Above are the figures of Eve and Lilith, with Cupid aiming an arrow symbolizing the will. The marriage takes place between the Black King and the Black King. Hold on. God dang it, I'm going to have to put the symbols on. And the White Queen. He wears a gold crown, bears a lance, and is attended by the Red Lion. His black child, interchanged with the White Queen's child, holds the base of the king's lance in one hand and a club in the other. She is attended by the White Eagle and her white child, who carries flowers in one hand and supports the base of the Grail in the other. In the lower section of the card is the winged Orphic egg, the very essence of life itself, which is the product of this union. So perhaps the most curious assertion made by Crowley about this card, for which he gives no basis whatsoever, is that in some original form it presented the story of creation. He claims that at the center of the Lover's card was Cain, shown having just slain Abel, and this is described at some length in his writing The Equinox. And although a reference to bloodshed may seem out of place in a card of marriage, we are told that the shedding of the blood of the brother is the very key to the lovers. Crowley's got a weird way of doing stuff, doesn't he? The shedding of the blood is necessary, for God did not hear the children of Eden until the blood was shed. Crowley elaborates on this idea in a footnote wherein he explains that the bloody sacrifice is not necessarily black magic. He says one should assume into one's own being, ceremonially, the whole karma of the creature slain. But the process is not to be viewed as a unique and singular experience, for Crowley tells us that the integration of the card can only be regained by repeated marriages, identifications in some form of hermaphroditism. Yeah, so Crowley wanted to go around and it's like, yeah, one girl's not going to do it. One concubine's not going to get me there. Maybe I'll have 30 concubines. That'll get me across the abyss. Sorry. And so the process is, I mean, he understood, like Crowley was intelligent enough to understand like what the Lover's card meant, but I guess he had a way of like, and you guys will find this in this spiritual realm. And I've talked to a dozen women that's been in this realm. There's always, and there's bad sides to everything, but there's always dudes that can speak very well. And in the end, they just, want to have sex with everybody. It's pretty disgusting, actually. So the process is one which is both reciprocal and repeated over and over. First, one brother dies and is absorbed into the other. Then there is a return to a balance of opposites, after which the second brother is killed and absorbed into the first. But the process is defined by the infinity sign of Mercury, magician, since the sun and moon unite under Mercury. So insofar as the marriage occurs repeatedly, the use of the number 12 in both the Waite and the Golden Dawn cards is highly significant. And Waite's card, the Tree of Life, behind the male figure, holds 12 flames. In the Golden Dawn and card, there are 12 points on the star of Perseus' shield. The 12 in both cases refer to the zodiac, and the perfection of each of the types of incarnation, theoretically return to the Godhead, requires that we incarnate repeatedly and perfect each of these types in turn. As a marriage of the king and queen under a floating Cupid, the Lovers relates to the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, written at the beginning of the 17th century. This is a work which, like the Fama I can never say that word, Fraternitanus, is one of the key documents of the Hermetic Kabbalism. And unlike so many alchemical texts, the chemical wedding is immensely readable, having the charming qualities of a fairy tale. Yet it remains one of the next profound pieces of esoteric symbolism ever written. And those who read the text and meditate on it will gain exceptional insights into both the lovers and temperance. One such insight relates to the suggestion that blood is spilled on this path, and there are, in fact, a number of events at the chemical wedding which reinforce this idea. So, anytime you see this card, I'll remember that there's a background to it, basically. And there are 32 degrees in the paths of wisdom. So a lot of Freemasons know this. A lot of Rosicrucians know this. And the the ones that know it, have studied the Tree of Life. They've just studied the Kabbalah. I'm not saying that there's people that know so much about the Kabbalah. It's insane. But the basics isn't hard to understand. This is where people get the idea of sex magic and all this other stuff and why it works. Because if you tap into any power in the universe that works, like electricity works, it just does. We figured that out. It was probably a metaphysical and magical thing before. Like, I'm just saying, Jehovah and Baal had a battle, and because lightning struck, Jehovah became the god. So back then, electricity was a metaphysical, magical principle. Just like nowadays, this love, or the uniting of masculine and feminine, It doesn't matter if you pick up a chaos magic book. It doesn't matter what it is. Tends to manifest things because it is a law of the universe. It's a power in the universe, right? Babies, whatever. It manifests all kinds of things. But the real key here is to unite this inside yourself so that you can fill your own cup. And it's hard, the bloodshed that I believe that they're talking about, regardless of all the sex magic stuff. But basically what Robert Wang is saying is the bloodshed of the ego has to happen. Your ego is always going to be there, right? Like it's always going to be there, like some friend. And at first it's like your best friend. And then as you get older and more mature, it starts becoming like that friend that you really don't want to take to the party. You know, everybody's got that friend, right? There's like, oh man, is he coming? You know, he's just going to ruin the vibe, you know. But yeah, Karma, is that Karma Michelle? So the Gemini energy also represents the twins opposites, but it also represents choice, which is I think that is one of our, like, freedom and choice is our biggest power on the earth. And I say this on a lot of different shows that I've been on, even as a guest or on here, that I believe that as long as you are open and truthful, naked, basically, like this card shows, and you give the other person a choice in the matter, and you give yourself a choice and the freedom to be open and authentic, it isn't that hard to disintegrate the ego. It isn't until we become outwardly focused, or if we let our desires burn us up, like the Devil card, which we'll get into after the break, that we lose the love inside of us. We lose that power. Now, the Devil card it's not all bad. There's like, desire can be a great thing, but I can tell you time and time again in my life, it's gotten me in nothing but trouble and suffering, which is why this card shows a blackness behind it. Just like when you go down the path of the swords, it turns black. Right. We'll get into that though. I hope you guys learned something from that. Like, this book, I highly recommend. And usually if I do a tarot reading for somebody and I pull the Lover's card, I don't always assume that it's another person in the mix. Just like when I pulled the devil card, it depends on the other cards in the lineup too, and how they're facing and all that stuff. But I don't always assume it's another person. A lot of times it is a union of the opposites in ourselves. And there's a lot of this energy going on today in our society where other people, the outward world, they're trying to confuse it. The divine masculines are trying to come into their own, and the divine feminines are trying to come into their own. And there's a great struggle going on. And so both of these two forces are lining up inside of us. And so whether or not people realize this, because they're confused, some people are confused. I'm not saying that, I don't want to get into this whole gender thing, but some people, like, they stopped looking inside themselves for the answer, and they started asking the outward world, like, what's going on with me? Like, I'm a man, but I have this feminine energy I feel in me, or I'm a woman, but I have all this masculine drive inside, and it's perfectly natural. It's a process, depending on where you are in the process. Stop reading the internet to try to figure out who you are on the inside. Never take advice when it comes to matters of the heart. I believe, just like the Lover's card shows, that everything that you do in life when it comes to love, your purpose, all of that stuff has to be divinely guided. In a sense, you have to fall in love with the part of you and the part of the world and the part of all this stuff that you can't see, and have faith in it. Genevieve's asking, can one do a reading for oneself? Absolutely. That's the most powerful reading you'll ever do, is for yourself. Absolutely. I would do readings for yourself as much as you want. I don't feel I'm messing with the tarot. It's always been in my life because of my family, so it's more of a way of life for me, even when I distance myself from it. Pops up in my life, so it doesn't seem like, yeah, tarot's it's not bad. It's not devil cards or anything like that. When you look at Renaissance art, do you go, oh man, that's terrible, that's bad? Isn't that funny? Like, you could take your family probably to an art museum and look at Renaissance art all day long, or alchemical art all day long with the symbolism in it, and they won't say a thing. They're always like, oh, that's interesting, or that's beautiful. Or the symbols and the pictures of the churches and stuff, well, that's interesting. But if you put it on a card and you look at it and go, well, I think this means this or that, the tarot is a beautiful thing. Like, what we've done and what people use divination for is because we want to have conversations with the higher self. We want to have that conversation, but we've learned over time that the higher self doesn't speak to us like we do. Like English, it communicates through symbols. It communicates through your experience. It communicates through synchronicities. So we've developed all kinds of tools, not just the tarot, but all kinds of things through meditation, through art, through our creations, to learn how to communicate to the higher self. In fact, when we express ourselves, when we give into the lover's energy, when we express ourselves, we are really communicating with it. And you can tell this by how beautiful someone's art is, whether it's a movie, a podcast, a picture. By the way, if you're by yourself and you want to watch a movie, in my opinion, watch The Fifth Element. That's a good Valentine's Day movie because it has all the esoteric symbols in it. Genevieve says, have you ever used regular playing cards to get answers playing solitaire? No. You should call in and talk to me about that, but I do have to take a break. I know that people do use regular playing cards to do divination, but it's never playing solitaire. That's pretty interesting. I don't know how you do that. How do you do that? 501-777-5631. Next, we'll get into the Two of Cups. It's their Valentine's Day show. We're talking about the lovers, the Two of Cups, and the Devil card. And this is kind of fun. We're also digging into Robert Wangs' book. And tomorrow night, we'll get back into the alien interview and the what happens after we die stuff. Why not? I love Valentine's Day. You better have some chocolates while if you're listening to this. Damn, I need my glasses.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio. Off my face, don't know where I am, 'cause I got my drugs from Amsterdam. Hey.
For me? Or will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energies.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's Legal Clinic. Remember Ed's motto, no matter how big your problem is, we'll take it. No matter how weak your case is, we'll take it. And no matter how large your bankroll is, we'll take
The
it.
future of medicine is already here. Protect yourself and those around you from the effects of electromagnetic radiation and recharge your body with life energy. This is your chance to take control of your balance, your quality of life, and your future. The effects of Centropic products have been verified from a scientific point of view and can be backed up with research. This is future technology, a biotech enterprise with breakthrough technologies that facilitate the protection, regeneration, and recharging of both human and animal populations. These patented wellness devices can help optimize energy and performance, speed up regeneration, and protect you from the harmful effects of non-thermal e-smog. Get back to feeling your best with a new level of clarity, vitality, and balance with the advanced and effective products of Centropics. It's as Albert Einstein said, the future is here, and future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies. Get started on your wellness journey by going to advancedwellnesstechnology.com or fringe.fm/bioenergy.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And, with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have any body to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's Airlines, now offering our fabulous frequent flyers discount program. Yes, after you've flown as few as 260 million miles on Ed's. On your next trip, we'll allow you or a friend of your choice to pay double our usual fare for just half price.
There's a thing in here over there.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void Radio here live on the Fringe FM. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. We're going over some cards that have to correspond with love, the old lovey-dove stuff. I hope you guys are enjoying your Valentine's Day, whether you're by yourself or with somebody. And even if you're, like, single, man, go out on a date. Like, don't be stupid. Or if you can't go out on a date, then get in touch with both energies of yourself. Like, if you're a dude, give yourself a sugar foot scrub or whatever, man. And if you're a girl, like, I don't know. I'm not a girl. How do you guys tap into your masculine energy? I don't know. It should be easy if you're a feminine person to be feminine. And it should be easy if you're masculine to be masculine. But Valentine's Day, we want to bring it together if we can. I'm kind of sentimental about certain holidays. I can't help it. So let's look at this next card before we get into the devil card. I know Chris said I shaved. I did too, man. I shaved today too. That's a masculine thing. I shaved my face. Is that a feminine thing or a masculine thing to shave? Girls do it too. I don't know, man. I don't want to offend anybody. I tend to offend people. You could see too, like when I do it and I'll offend somebody and they'll just jump off. Because I can see the listeners like on the station. I have that pulled up, and then I have the listeners on like YouTube and Facebook. And usually, if I say something offensive, a bunch of people will they'll come off, but then some of them will come back. What's up, Chris? Hey, let me turn this Lover's card off. Let's get into the Two of Cups. God, that's small. Wish I could. Hold on, I think I could fix that, actually. I think I figured it out. No? Well, you guys could see it. You know what the Two of Cups looks like. We're going to get into this, like, there we go. Deeper esoteric meaning of it. So first, we have to realize that the twos represent Bina on the tree, not Bina, I'm sorry, Chokma on the Tree of Life. All of the twos. So all of the twos fall into that sphere on the Tree of Life. So Robert Wang describes it like this. He says the four deuces or twos symbolize the powers of the king and queens, first uniting and initiating the force, but before the prince and princess are thoroughly brought into action. Therefore, do they generally imply the initiation and foundation of anything and everything. So it's even higher, like that force is even higher in the Lovers. But the Two of Cups, the first thing I noticed when I first started meditating on this card, like I said, again, was the colors. I was like, okay, there's earth, the color of air is yellow, they have the blue in there, they've got water, the cups represent water, then they have the higher self for these forces coming together. But why the yellow boots? Why the yellow stockings? And why are people changing the colors on other decks from the original one? You know, we get into that too. So there's the Two of Wands, the Two of Earths, but we're looking into the Two of Pentacles, and the Two of Cups, right? So this is Venus and Cancer. That's a beautiful energy, by the way. And there's angels. We have this in the tarot course, the angels that you can kind of invoke and all this other stuff that correspond with this energy. We won't get into that. But this is Chokma and Brya. So this is essentially the Chokma force and the world of Brya, which is the creative world. So the influence of Chokma in the mental world. Cancer is a watery sign, so cups apply this. This is a card of feeling and romance, particularly in material things, which is why you can see all the pomegranates on one of these characters in here, which has the potential for energy misspent, particularly in material things, which that's kind of funny. Fish generally refer to the goddess Venus, the dolphin relating more specifically to Neptune, and the sun god Apollo. So he's talking about the other cards, not just this card, but the Golden Dawn cards and the Crowley cards. So on the Golden Dawn card, the solar male symbolism is implicit in the gold color of one dolphin, while the silver and the other is lunar, female. They work together to bring light to our world. Remember that. Light and extension, light in the void, right? Which is also the nature of the sign Cancer. And reinforces the meaning of the card as harmony of male and female. The water springs from a pure source, the upper lotus, and pours down into the cups, and ultimately reaching our material earth. The idea of the water can only flow through the energy provided by the earth. The idea is that, and he has the hay symbol. So the idea is that the water, hay, which yod, hay, vav, hay, which hay is bria, it comes down, right, can only flow through the energy provided by the Chokma fire into the earth. Choke My Fires, Yod. So it is a joyous and loving partnership. The Crowley card is based entirely on that of the Golden Dawn, and in the Marseille card, we find the apparent design roots of both. And in his exoteric version, Waite emphasizes the divinatory meaning of love, marriage, and partnership. So who would have known that esoterically, that these cards, like the Two of Cups, represents love more in a partnership sense, right? And then the Lovers represents it more in a higher sense. And that's pretty simple, though. That's why I like the number cards, because they're pretty simple. The minor cards are very simple. But when I first started meditating on this, I was like, look at why does this lady have red shoes? This is stuff you got to ask yourself. Like, why did Waite put these colors in here and hide certain colors? Like that red roof isn't there for no reason. What about the green hills? Why has he got yellow stockings and all this other stuff? And then the more I looked at it, I couldn't even tell which one was the man and the woman, but it definitely looked like two opposites coming together, doesn't it? So anytime I pull this card in a divination, I think we might be having some technical issues on the station. Anytime we pull this card in divination, I just think of love. I don't really think of like love between two people or two opposites. I don't really think about that when it comes to the Lovers like most people do, unless the other cards are pointing to that. But the Two of Cups usually is two people. So if you're doing a divination for somebody and you pull this card, more than likely there's some love involved with another person. Just because you pull the Lovers card doesn't necessarily mean that. But the divinatory stuff is easy. It's the deeper aspects that we want to look at. So on the tree, if we remember, there's 4 worlds, right? And you can put all of the like 1 through 10 cards and all of the Sephirah on the tree. The ace in Kether, all the 4 aces reside in Kether, and then the rest of them correspond with the spheres on the tree. And each tree represents a world. And so Lyam Thomas Christopher, and I think Dion Fortune was one of the first people that used this system for self-initiation into magic, right? So you would actually you would have and I know Liam does this in his book, you'd make 4 trees of each element. And when you were studying an element, you would study each aspect of that element using this stuff. And you would go through each element that way. That's not really taught in like the other orders of the Golden Dawn. But that one's pretty simple, right? Hopefully. See, love is simple. It's the deeper esoteric Lovers card that's a bit more complicated. Okay, so give me just a second. I got to fix a sound thing here on the station. I'm not taking a commercial break or something, but I've got a flag popping up here, and it's not a video flag. Hold on just a second, guys. What the hell is that?
The fairground ride, that perfect light, hey, spin as fast a kid. What day that was, I lost my shadow. Leagues above this town, I will meet you there someday. Future set, a beautiful subject. The sweet smell of the rain, what I'd give for that to stay.
there's a lot going on here, man. Sorry, I got audio encoder was giving me errors for some reason. All right, so we've done the lover's card. If you guys want to call in, I probably need to pull the phones up. Any of you guys trying to call in? I probably need to pull the phones up to make sure you can call in. Earlier, I was like, oh no, Genevieve, call in. Totally forgot to pull the phones up. I watched The Fifth Element today, did my Valentine's Day thing. And it's kind of like the 4th of July for me, or Christmas. I actually like the 4th of July better than Christmas. Yeah, it looks like somebody tried to call in. My bad. All right, so let's get into the devil card. So we looked at the lover's card. Now we're going to look at the devil card, and I'm going to see if I can blow this one up. This is another one of my favorite cards. You wouldn't think I would talk about it on Valentine's Day, would you? I was going to do the moon too, but the moon, it represents too much fear, you know? The moon is something we have to get past. It's like our insecurities and our fears and stuff, which is like, you know, bringing the sun and the moon together is a part of this whole process. But I think the devil card is a very interesting card. What's up, Wesley? What's up, Jane? Genevieve says, I'm not sure it's a legit divination tool. Do you mean the tarot? I miss so much of the chat. Sorry about that. So the Path of Ayin. This is the book that you need to get. Go buy it if you don't have it, the Qabalistic Tarot. If you want to get into the deeper esoteric stuff, right? There's a ton of tarot books, but this is it. So the Path of Ayin, which is the devil, which is the 15th key. It is, the path color is indigo. It means the eye. The simple letter is mirth, and the Lord of the gates of matter and the child of the forces of time. And on the 32 paths of wisdom, which is the 26th path, it is called the renovating intelligence, because the holy God renews by it all the changing things which are renewed by the creation of the world. Damn. I'm gonna have to do this. Everything's starting to get blurry, man. I can't imagine where my eyeballs are gonna be when I'm in my 50s. Right? Like, I have no idea. Hopefully I don't go blind. God, I can see this so much better now. So the Path of Ayin, the devil, connects Tifereth, the center of the sun consciousness, with Hod, the sphere of Mercury, and the intellect. The 26th path is formative, and in terms of the structure of the self, is an intellectual bridge between the personality and the individuality. Of all the paths, this may be the most difficult for those rooted in Western cultures to understand, for its interpretation flies in the face of the meaning which most people have come to attach to the devil. In Kabbalistic terms, the devil is not viewed as an evil entity having its own separate existence. Rather, it represents a special mystery which must be penetrated before one can directly know the higher principle of the self. The devil, which is the adversary, is the master of manifest form which we must face and conquer. Paul Foster Case in this study course went further than any other writer in pinpointing to the profound implications of this card. He said, of all the keys of the tarot, key 15 is one of the most important. It is the symbolic veil for the greatest practical secret of occultism. It both conceals and reveals the secret of the powers ascribed by tradition to Moses, David, and Solomon. This is the same great secret Pythagoras learned in Egyptian temple schools. It is the great arcanum of alchemy and magic. To know it is to be able to make the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. Yet those who know it cannot tell. For the essential point is beyond the power of words to express. Here we understand that we are dealing with a path on the tree of life, which is a transition between the intellect of normal waking consciousness and true spiritual consciousness. There are 3 paths leading directly into Tifereth. Isn't that interesting? The devil, temperance, and death. Each of these paths represent a special trial, but it must be reiterated that the student is not required to travel all 3 paths. Those who choose the devotional path of the middle pillar need deal only with temperance, leading from Yesod to Tifreth. Yet the choice of following each and every path means the acquisition of control over the energies which each path symbolizes, which is essentially what the magician is trying to do. Every path confers a unique power. And on the other hand, to travel the middle pillar means to understand and balance within the self and the energies of all the 22 paths, or the energies of the arcana. The difference here is that one can understand these conceptual aspects of consciousness without necessarily developing the ability to manipulate these same energies. It might be said that what differentiates the student magician from the Catholic monk is a greater level of curiosity. I always thought Catholics, monks and priests were magicians too, at least ceremonial magicians. I've always looked at them that way. And a lot of them wrote books on magic too. Some, of course, come to occult studies through a desire for raw power, but quickly learn that if such power is acquired and misused, there is a devastating price to pay. There is no question that the devotional meditational path is a much safer one than the magical path. Did y'all hear that? For y'all that are interested in magic? Genevieve says, you look smart with glasses. So did I look dumb with them off? I'm just picking at you. So, no, this is the book I'm reading from, Genevieve. It's called The Qabalistic Tarot by Robert Wang. You should get it. I think everybody should get it if you want to learn the tarot, like the deeper symbols of the tarot. When I was in the reason why I say that, because when I was doing my Golden Dawn stuff, like the beginning, like my teachers told me to get this book, and I was like, man, there's like 50,000 books on the tarot. Why get this one? And I realized after a while why, That which is symbolized by the devil is in fact raw power. Right, we like that, especially us Americans, don't we? And men, raw power. That's what we want. Hell yeah. It is the force which brings about the transmutation of the tower. Ruh-roh. A fact underscored by the relationship of this card to Mars. The devil is the sign Capricorn, in which Mars is exalted. This is a weighty, even blind sign of Earth, one which symbolizes both the highest and the lowest, yet it is considered a sign of initiation or release from the limitations of matter. Remember, I was showing you guys that's actually the double cubed altar that thing is, those two are attached to there. One day we'll have to do a show on the double cubed altar in Golden Dawn Magic. So it's considered a sign of initiation or release from the limitations of matter. It is limitation that is suggested by the rulership of Capricorn by Saturn, the planet of Bina, the Great Mother. Capricorn governs the limitations of form, whether that means the enclosure of matter or time, the artificial system by which we meter and enclose all activities. So Robert Wang is calling matter the artificial system, almost like a simulation. Devil represents the average person's misperception of reality, the belief that our material condition is real, and he puts real in quotations, in the true sense of the word. This misperception is symbolized here in two ways. First, the devil is intended to be seen as a humorous figure, the boogeyman of our collective childhood. Our belief in the illusion of matter created by the energy symbolized in this card is actually laughable, and it is here more than implied that laughter and good humor about our lives is a tool which will help us to transcend the illusion. I know Owen Hunt would agree with that. We must learn not to take our perceptions of the material world seriously. Mirth is the first great corrective. Second, our misperception of the real nature of things is suggested by the inverted pentagram on the devil's head. The sacred symbol of mankind turned upside down means that most people's vision of the world and its relationship to a spiritual reality itself is in fact upside down. And the meaning of the letter I-N, or the I, means that the lessons of this path is a reorganization of perspective, a new vision of things, The eye symbolizes both our acceptance of what we see in the sensory world as real and the greater vision, which comes through the use of the inner eye. And then I talk about the magical eye too in the courses that I have there at Patreon that talks about how to use this inner eye, right? To accept what our physical eye tells us is to be subject to illusion and bondage, a state symbolized in the Golden Dawn and weight cards by the chain figures. The figures are horned to show that they are, however, unwittingly the servants of this comical nature. Now, you guys, can you see where the masculine is looking in this card? What's keeping him chained, guys? Just saying. You really want to tap into your power, overcome that. That's all you got to do. It's not that hard. One primary statement of this path is that the devil does not exist as he is postulated by the ignorant. As it is written in the Emerald Tablet, all things were from one by the meditation of one, meaning that there is nothing in the universe not of God, including this so-called devil. The card contains one of the greatest mysteries of the Kabbalah, which is that the devil is the necessary meaning of reaching the Christ Buddha consciousness of Tifereth, described variously as the source of the forms and appearance of relative existence, and as the Lord of the gates of matter and the child of the forces of time. The devil is both the tempter and the redeemer. That means he's got a purpose. He is also described as the prince of the powers of the air, given the bat wings, right? Indicating that this energy is mediating in the flow of astral currents. Air is to be understood here as the whole of Yetzirah, or the astral world, which is another thing we talk about in the tarot, which all the cards of air correspond to, which kind of is why they end up in blackness at the end, which controls the ebb and flow of matter, which is another symbol that black and the cube and all this other stuff represents. So the path confers the ability to bring right side up the devil's pentagram and to lift his torch upward. In practical terms, this means the ability to reverse the currents of astral light. Any of you guys read any books on the astral light? You should. There's a lot of theosophical texts about it too. Intellect and disciplined meditation are the means by which this may be accomplished, and by which the philosopher's stone and elixir of life may be produced. That's a matter of opinion. If you talk to some of the people nowadays about the philosopher's stone, they argue about it, actually, what it really is. I don't know why, but they do. Well, it's going to start a magical whatever. The process begins with the intellect of Hod and leads into the intuition of Tifereth. This is the meaning of the text of the 32 Paths of Wisdom, which describes Ayin, or the path of the devil, as the renewing intelligence. We understand that it is only through the forces of the devil and our right understanding of them that we may come directly to the light of God and the Sun. Not S-U-N, but the Sun, S-O-N. The scriptures state that even Christ himself passed through the temptations of the devil. And this, the way is pointed out for us more clearly than the fundamentalist Christian could ever begin to suspect. Eliphas Levi, who is one of my favorite magicians, by the way, called this path the first physical manifestation of the divine breath. And here we recall that Saturn eats its children, meaning that while the creation of the illusion of form is essential to manifestation on the earthly plane, and is what manifestation actually means, the dissolution of these forms is essential to the path of return. For the alchemist, dissolution means analysis, which is precisely what we apply when we intellectually separate the component energies of ourselves and our universe into 22 paths of the tree of life. It's a pretty cool tool, an egregore. I highly recommend it. Like I said, it doesn't mean it's ultimate reality, but it's cool to understand. So first, we must conceptually, as well as practically, separate out these component parts. Then we must reintegrate them through our understanding of their operation. To extend an analogy made earlier, it is only by focusing on each part of our body system, considering each organ separately, that we come to an understanding of how the organs work together to maintain our physical being. The reintegration in this sense is our overall view of the interaction of the organs. Having come to this overall view, we can then begin to actively apply the new knowledge. This is a positive phase of using what we know. It is the step which follows the dissolution and reintegration. But as we function within an earthly incarnation, everything must be related back to our mundane condition. Each lesson must be grounded. This is the psychological meaning of a process which has been described in symbolic terms over the centuries. Our psychology has given us words for relationships of energies which the ancients could only symbolize. Words such as subconscious and unconscious have become such an integral part of our vocabulary that they are taken for granted. We are thus more prepared than any other age to deal with the concept of the mysteries, including what has been variously termed the Akashic fluid, the Odic force, or the astral light. This force is manipulated for whatever end one may choose, through an understanding of the devil. Here, Levi, who used the term great magical agent, describes the process of manipulation as to dissolve, to consolidate, and to quicken, and to moderate. This is dissolution, reintegration, activity, and grounding. The same qualities can be described as fire, water, air, and earth. And then, with your powers combined, you become Captain Planet, right? No, I'm just fucking. All right, so the requisite interaction of the four elements is also suggested in the Golden Dawn and weight cards. The inverted torch is fire. The eagle's claws are water. The wings are air. And the grotesque body of the devil is the earth. One interesting, though even less obvious symbolism is in the devil being represented with the ears of an ass. Jackass, a mythological reference pointing toward a sexual interpretation of the card. Priapus was the Roman god of the phallus, to whom the jackass or ass was traditionally sacrificed. So when women call you jackass, they're probably picking up on that masculine phallus energy, right? Readers will note that it is virtually impossible to make this statement without seeming to intend a bad pun. But the symbolism of the Golden Dawn and weight card is essentially the same, with one exception. In the Golden Dawn card, the devil holds a single horn in his right hand. This is intended to be the horn of a ram. The beast of Aries, the path of the emperor ruled by Mars. And this, Mathers pointed to the most profound meaning of the card, for this is also the Jewish shofar, the ram's horn, which sounds the call to prayer at Yom Kippur. Thus does the devil hold up the very means of release from bondage. And you can see that he's holding people in bondage, right? Moreover, we are led to understand that what is symbolized by the path of the emperor is the pure energy, recalling Aries to be the first sign of the zodiac, an initiator of spring, which causes the fall of the tower and the testing of judgment. All bear relationship to Bina, the sphere, which is a fiery red and absolute. If you look at Crowley's card, it's far more complex than the others and is again explicitly sexual like most of his cards are. He describes the key as representing creative energy in its most material form and as Pan-Paginator, the all-begetter. His goat is Pan standing on the highest mountaintop on earth against a background of the exquisite, tenuous, complex, and fantastic forms of madness. Between the legs of a goat is the wand of the Golden Dawn Chief Adept, and it takes little observation to realize that Crowley has represented in his card is a penis with two testicles. Yeah, his card just looks like a big dildo. It's obvious. I mean, sorry if you're watching this and hope your kids aren't watching. I put no children on my thing, so don't get mad at me. And it's Valentine's Day too, whatever. But I didn't put Crowley's card up here. He makes a further statement by having the tip of the male organ outside the card, symbolically in the greater heavens, while the testicles contain the bound-up forms of physical manifestation. Undoubtedly, there are many who will be made uncomfortable by the recurrence of pointedly sexual symbolism in Crowley's cards. The symbolism has been understood by initiates of the mysteries for centuries, but it is only recently that our society has reached a state of maturity where such ideas may be discussed openly and in proper perspective. Certainly, any adult will agree that the orgasm is the most powerful natural force to affect the human body, yet it is merely an indicator of the power of God so overwhelming that our minds cannot begin to conceive it, which it is a microcosmic symbol or experience of divine power, which is why it's a sacred energy. Which is why in psychic self-defense, Dion Fortune specifically talks about there are only two things that can psychically attack you. People that implant fear and doubt, right? And your sexual energy. You know, I was talking to somebody today, and I think that as guys, we really got to and I'm just speaking to the dudes out here that are in this field at this moment. You guys don't realize that, I'm not a feminist or anything. Don't take me wrong when I say this, but you guys don't realize that a lot of this stuff is deep, and you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be open to learn it, to talk about it, to discuss it. And a lot of women in this field have been taken advantage of, just like in any other field. And it's wrong. And you can bet, regardless of how wrong it is and how much karma that person's going to get, it still hurts. So don't do it. Like, if that's your whole objective, in my opinion, to be in this esoteric world, is you're just trying to do that, you don't belong here. Anyways, so the devil card, right? So when I first meditated upon this, I thought, man, I'm going to be honest, the first tarot deck I ever bought, this card scared me. I was like, man, this is a scary card. I don't know if I want to look at it. It's like the bat wings and all this stuff, but I was still told to meditate upon it, and it would bring out a lot of fear in me. So it would bring out, which I think is a part of the dissolution. It would bring out fear. But I noticed one of the first things I noticed is that they're chained to this double Q, but they could lift the chains off their head anytime they wanted. But their gaze, I couldn't tell you what the woman's looking at. She just looks like she's got a tail that it's her whole body's just made up of material. It's just super materially focused. And that's what she's looking at. Kind of going through the Pennies magazine, And then the guy, you could obviously see what he's looking at. And it was okay, well, I'm starting to understand. And this was my primitive first understandings of this, is that the bat wings and the devil, there's this evil devil force that's playing with people's minds, and it's keeping them focused on material stuff, and their desires are burning them up, their obsessions and their addictions and things like that. And see, I didn't know jack squat about these cards. Yeah, she's looking at me, right? Yeah. I didn't know jack squat about this card. And you'll find that if you don't read any of these books, if you never pick up a book on the tarot, or you never read Elvis Levi or any of this stuff, and you just meditate upon the symbols, these, Manly P. Hall talks about, these truths, these deep truths will just come out. They're a part of you, right? They're just a part of who you are. That's it. And so when we dive into this work, whether it's the Lovers or the Devil card or the Two of Cups, essentially that's what relationship and love is all about. We have the power to choose, and we have the power to relate. And that has such a massive ripple effect in our lives, right? And through love is where the biggest alchemical processes happen. And that's why I think on this Valentine's Day, it's the biggest mystery of all. Because you can't, once you have love for anything, whether it's yourself or another person, the first thing that happens, yeah, that one's kind of small, isn't it? The first thing that happens, just like what happened to Christ, is that you fear that it will go away. That's the first thing that happens. The first time we feel love, where we feel a happiness and a divine sense of awareness that we've never felt, the devil card tends to show up. And we fear that we'll go away, right? We fear that we'll lose it. Or if we don't understand it, we'll fear that too. So it'll bring out wounds. And these wounds have to be brought out to be healed, which is also a part of Tantra. It's a part of the Eastern systems too. It has to be brought out to be healed. Or if you don't heal it, if you don't overcome your fears or your obsession with material things or your maybe even perceptions of what love is, if you don't really dive deep into this, if you don't open up to it, then you will recycle under the moon over and over again. And your unconscious patterns will rehash over and over again. And this is why we're all seeking that lifelong partner that really gets us. But I told this to somebody the other day. You should celebrate your differences because there is no other person on the earth like you. And we all have this deep nostalgic longing to be understood, right? But you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to do that, which is kind of what Gemini energy is all about. You have to be able to see differences and see perceptions and celebrate the differences of people and realize that we're all this like unique divine snowflake. So there may be somebody that gets you on certain levels, but there will never be another you on this earth that you're looking for, which is a big lesson I had to learn. Like I couldn't understand why every time I fell in love, these wounds would come out, and I don't understand why. Why would somebody do that? It doesn't even make sense. Why would they be this, or why would they be so hurtful, or why this and why that, or I don't deserve this and I don't deserve that, and the egos bark, 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 bark. You know, and it hurts, right? Just like all of your wounds do, they hurt. But it's either trying to show you how to love yourself more, or the other person. And it is the most powerful thing on earth. That's why we have love, is to relate, and it makes us grow. Whether it's love or the lack of it, both things make us grow. And our power as humans are to, in my opinion, to have the choice to do one of those two things. So I hope on this Valentine's Day, and yeah, I'm going to get out of here a little early. So I hope on this Valentine's Day that you enjoy, whether you're with yourself or your partner, the love between these two energies. Celebrate the differences between you two, even the wounds that it brings out, so that you can heal yourself or heal another person. And just embellish in the mystery. Maybe, and if you're by yourself, maybe watch The Fifth Element. Who knows? I think that would be a good idea, right? I don't really have any love songs to go out on, man. I've got all these, like, which one can I play that YouTube won't take me down? Hey, let's do that alien love song. How about that? For those that are already in love with yourself, but you don't have anybody, you can fall in love with an alien. How about that? We'll do the alien. We'll finish the alien interview tomorrow night. Happy Valentine's Day, y'all. I love each and every one of you. Sweet dreams.
I made love to an alien near Roswell last night. We strolled along together in the pale moonlight. I had a funny feeling that something wasn't right. I made love to an alien last night. When she gripped my hand, I was feeling mighty fine, but her fingers with mine would not intertwine. When I bent down and gazed into her eyes, they were big as donuts and blacker than the sky. She said, I'm feeling lonely. I said, Lord, so am I. We'll stroll along together, but we won't question why. That ground beneath your feet is flashing red and white, and sprouting little mushrooms left and right. Then she threw me down and put me on my back. To tell the truth, I thought I'd seen my last. But she settled down and snuggled in my arms, and I made love to that maiden from the stars.